Yes, I'm here. You have me.
Okay, well, Dan, it's your floor. Take it away.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen as well? Yes. Wow, you can. All right. Um, okay, so my name's Dan Forbes. I'm a developer advocate with Parity Technologies. So that means I kind of help make it easier for people to understand the types of capabilities that we create and work with at Parity. And then I make it easier for people to interact with these capabilities. And so my colleague Dan Shields, we're decentralized in all ways except the name Dan here at Parity. So my colleague Dan Shields presented on Substrate earlier, which was a really great introduction into our kind of preferred in-house framework for building blockchains. And so what I'm going to talk about now is our protocol, or what some people call a meta protocol, that we have developed for actually allowing these blockchains to scale and interact with one another in a way that makes it possible to create systems that work for humans in the real world. And we have we have many wonderful people in our ecosystem, but one of the many awesome people that we have is this guy Soto Watanabe. And he said that in other types of blockchains, it always felt like you were molding your problem to the solution. But with Polkadot and with Substrate, you're able to create a solution that solves a problem. And so Substrate is this kind of flexible framework, this toolkit for building a blockchain that can do all sorts of different things in all different ways. And then in a lot of ways, Polkadot is kind of like this boring layer, this infrastructure layer. You can compare it to something like AWS or Heroku or an operating system on your computer, something that a program built using a framework like Substrate runs on top of. And the last thing you ever want to do is think about your operating system. You almost want that to kind of like disappear into the background. And so Polkadot is really this infrastructure layer. We're going to talk all about it. But I guess, because Dan has already done such a good job of kind of digging into the details a little bit more, I do want to take a second to just talk about a bit the vision of Polkadot, and at a visionary level, what does it mean to, welcome yourself to the Polkadot ecosystem? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And really what it all comes down to is this idea of really a new internet that's designed from the infrastructure layer up to allow people to maintain custody of their data in a way that doesn't kind of devolve into reliance on these centralized entities. I don't want to go about like naming the names of these companies that we all delegate our personal information to, but this is not a good way for people to interact with one another. People should have custody of their own data and their own personal information. But because of the fact that the internet was basically built as a way for academics to trade academic information freely with one another, and there was never really a requirement in this design phase for things to be secure or private in any way, that just wasn't part of what would be called the security model. What we now operate in as the internet, or Web 2.0, it's really this amalgam of hacks that, with kind of tape and string, we're running world-class global enterprises on a research tool. And so Polkadot and blockchain systems are new ways for people to engage with one another that doesn't rely on centralized authority, that allows people to have control over their data and whatnot. And so that's what Polkadot's all about. Welcome to Polkadot. Welcome to that mindset. And let's talk a little bit now, a little bit more in details. Now that we got to kind of this visionary stuff out of the way. So yeah, I think I kind of just talked about this. It's a new web, and you may hear us talk about at Parity or our research organization that we work very closely with, the Web3 Foundation. You may hear us talk about Web 3.0 or the Web3 vision. In fact, lately internally we've been talking about these terms and how they can get a little bit overloaded. So we're trying to use more W3F to refer to the Web3 Foundation, which is our research organization where we write academic papers and come up with new protocols that are, secure and whatnot. And then at Parity Technologies, we implement those as software products. And this is all to enable the Polkadot ecosystem, which is what I'm here to talk about and get you excited about. So yeah, Polkadot it's been a long time in the making. It's not kind of the new kid on the block. It's been around for a while, and it even traces its lineage, as I stated in one of the earlier discussions, back to the Ethereum ecosystem. Dr. Gavin Wood, our founder, kind of the main guy at Parity, he wrote the Ethereum technical specification. And so he spent a lot of time thinking about ways to make scalable blockchain platforms. And he's done some pretty amazing work at Parity. I feel very lucky to get to advocate for his vision. It's pretty compelling. He works very closely with Robert Habermeyer, who's today working on our parachain protocols, which is something I'll talk about a little bit, another super duper smart guy. And then we have Peter. He's, I don't think with the Web3 Foundation any longer, but he was certainly one of the founders of this, helping to create the Polkadot white paper, which you can go out and read. But this is kind of the team behind all of this. And really, Gav, the CEO of my company, it's really cool because he's not like a normal CTO. He writes a lot of code and is the main committer to the substrate, or one of the main committers, if not the main committer to the substrate code base. So it's really pretty cool. And if you're kind of a dork and a nerd and you like stuff like this, it's, highly encourage you to check out what we're doing at Parity. So I think kind of towards the end of his talk, Dan showed this image. And let's talk about it for a second, just to kind of at a high level, 10,000 foot view or whatever you want to call it. What is a Polkadot-like network? Because even the term Polkadot is a little bit overloaded. Probably we have some work to do to kind of get all these brands and stuff smoothed out. We're better at writing code than we are at doing the branding thing, but we're getting a lot better at that. So hold tight. And in fact, there's some really cool stuff going on right now where we're doing decentralized governance around our branding. But nonetheless, Polkadot is first and foremost, it's kind of a protocol. And so you may have heard the name Kusama, which is a Polkadot-like network that's all about experimentation and kind of pushing things forward. And there's a Kusama booth in the makerspace, which you should come visit us there. And then there's Polkadot, which implements the same protocol, but the goal is to be much more business-minded, much more stable. And so Polkadot is a protocol. And we're mostly, I would say, going to be talking about things at the protocol level, as opposed to talking about the Polkadot network, capital P, capital N. I'm a software engineer, so I'm going to talk about things in more abstract terms. Maybe if people have questions about the Polkadot network, I'll be happy to take those. But in a Polkadot-like network, which is something that I'd like to talk about, you have a couple of different components. I think you should be able to see my mouse because I'm sharing my screen. So, can I have a pointer? Ooh, fun. Okay, so this is a relay chain, which is kind of the central part of a Polkadot-like network. And in the Polkadot network, the Polkadot blockchain would be this relay chain. And so this is the relay chain that provides all this kind of boring infrastructure stuff that I was talking about. A lot of security, which we'll get into in a little bit, but then also kind of like some infrastructure services like message passing, so that all of the different parachains or like applications that are running on this infrastructure layer, they can all communicate with one another in addition to getting like security, like an application might get from an operating system. So think of the relay chain as kind of like an operating system type layer. Then obviously I've kind of already teased this idea of like these parachains, which are these application specific blockchains, which offered, decentralized consensus around the state of a system as it evolves over time, but they don't have to worry about a lot of the boring stuff, just like the apps that are deployed to Heroku don't have to worry about servers and instances and all that kind of stuff. They just know that there's compute, and that's what they use. Kind of a similar concept. Some of these parachains, or like this one in particular, may be connected to a bridge, which could connect them out to another chain, maybe another relay chain. So you could imagine this being Polkadot, and then this maybe being Kusama out here, just hypothetically speaking. Or as in this bridge kind of is meant to demonstrate here, it could be out to anything else. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, maybe Ethereum or something like that. So all of these parachains are kind of interoperable by default. You don't need bridges between them. The relay chain is the bridge, but then there could also be a bridge out to some other blockchain network that may be maybe a Polkadot-like network. And then kind of as a implementation detail for this time, let's just leave parathreads as kind of like an aside. Very similar thing to parachains, but essentially parachains have a very high level of reliability and availability. Parathreads a little bit lower. So going all the way kind of back to a vision of a blockchain as an enablement layer for a better type of web. This is a whole ecosystem that's built around blockchains to really make it work. And there's even more like governance and stuff that maybe we can talk about in a little bit as well. If there's ever any questions, please feel free. Like if you feel like it's a good time to ask me a question, I'm more than happy to take them. If you don't have questions, you're probably not listening close enough. But I think this was a good overview of kind of what this looks like. And let's move on to talk a little bit more about it. I actually didn't make these slides. I would never be able to make slides that look this good, to be honest with you. But on the one hand, these slides look way better than anything that I would ever make. But on the other hand, they don't necessarily tell the story in the order that I would tell it. I think all the pieces are there, but if it feels kind of like I'm jumping around, it's because I am, but it's cool. All the pieces are going to be there. And at the end, I'm going to make sure that you understand it all. That's my job. And ask questions if you don't. So let's talk a little bit about this interoperability piece. And we already kind of talked about this a little bit, but basically Polkadot, it allows for the creation of custom built blockchains, but then they're connected to this central relay chain, this infrastructure layer that allows all of the parachains, or even perhaps the parathreads that are connected to the relay chain, to all be interoperable by default. So that's one of the big problems with blockchains. And as Gav, has had a lot of experience looking at other blockchain networks and blockchain protocols, the lack of interoperability was a big problem. And so that's kind of been addressed within the Polkadot ecosystem. And then we even talked a little bit about bridges, which is I think it's correct to call that like a layer 2 solution. This is something that I've learned from my colleagues here at Parity, who I learn so much from every day. It's a great place to work. So a bridge is a type of layer 2 solution that connects out to a different blockchain network. And so they're not really specific to Polkadot in any way, but we have a lot of infrastructure, and there's a whole bridges library and a whole bridges team at Parity that works on bridges, because interoperability is such an important part of what we do. I'm just going to kind of grab my phone so I know I'm on time. Cool. All right. And again, if anyone has questions, just ask them throughout. I like to be kind of interactive. So Dan actually talked a lot about this, about how Substrate really, and Frame in particular, the runtime library is what, or the runtime framework, I should say, is what makes it so easy to build custom-built blockchains that are able to solve all different types of problems, different consensus engines. They can have the modules that they need while leaving the ones that they don't behind. This is kind of a central theme of computing. This isn't something that we invented here at Parity. That would be the dumb thing, to try to reinvent the wheel. What Gav and Rob are doing are taking tried and true computing principles like separation of concerns, modularity, and just extending it out into the blockchain infrastructure layer. And so Polkadot allows for application-specific parachains, and then Frame, our runtime framework or library, allows for the modular composition of application-specific runtimes. This all works at scale. This is the real boring stuff, if you ask me. I don't even think about this, as I shouldn't have to. Gav thought about this. Look, it works so much faster. I mean, I don't even like doing comparisons, but Polkadot is fast. We're built on Rust, which is a next generation, systems programming language, and obviously designed from the ground up to work in the real world. So speed is table stakes. Let's talk about the cool stuff. Yes, online governance. This is where stuff gets like next gen super cool. So you can think of like what is, like, first of all, what is governance? Governance is how a community establishes the flow of power. How does the community express their desires, and how do those desires materialize into action? And so there's, you can have like no governance, anarchy, basically. You could have kind of a plutocratic governance system, or you can use blockchain technology to build next generation governance systems that are unlike anything we've ever seen before. And so beyond the Polkadot protocol itself, within Frame, we have built governance applications that are built on top of algorithms created at the Web3 Foundation by PhD researchers who spend much more time working and much less time talking than I do. But we have things like different elections modules that make it so that maybe if I don't have a lot of tokens, which would be a very common way for someone to vote in a blockchain ecosystem, if I have a lot of tokens, I have a lot of say in a vote. And this is okay, this is fair, certainly, but it could devolve into a type of plutocracy. Maybe I have a lot of enthusiasm and even a lot to offer the network, but I just don't have a lot of money for one reason or another. And so in Polkadot, you can increase the amount that you vote into a vote by increasing the length of time that you agree to stay invested in the network. So your commitment becomes a type of currency. So this is like a wholly new protocol that's been built, a wholly new type of governance system that's been built on top of Polkadot and has materialized through the Frame runtime framework. Yes, this is just more kind of details about this. I'm not going to get into all the different ways that referenda, how a bill becomes a law. That's not super interesting, but it's there. I want you to get more excited about the fact that it's happening in a truly next generation fashion. And PS, this isn't something that's like future state. We launched in May. We've been through several phases of governance where I think Dan mentioned there was like a pseudo root user on Polkadot. It was Gav. And now that's gone. Now it's completely community governed using all of these next generation governance protocols that I was mentioning, and come to our ecosystem, learn more about it. Kusama is really where you can push the boundaries here. Industry leading security, again, kind of the boring stuff. there are cryptographers and researchers and protocol engineers at the Web3 Foundation that make sure that all of this works. Someone, brought up earlier the parity hack, multi-sig happened years ago. Stuff happens, we learn from our mistakes, but I think actually here's how we learn from those mistakes is that Polkadot at the protocol level, it allows for upgrades. And so people don't create infallible systems. People create systems that, first of all, our needs change over time. So we need to create systems that change over time as well, but we also may make mistakes. So the ability to perform upgrades is like the secret sauce, kind of cherry on top, that just adds it all to this security that's done by the Web3 Foundation researchers. So Dan talked about the runtime, I think, compiling down to WASM and becoming a part of the runtime storage. And so just like I can update a balance in an account in runtime storage by making a transaction, as long as you have the right access control rights, which in Polkadot is through governance that we talked about with, voting with commitment or with tokens or whatever, you can update the definition of the runtime and fix bugs, add new features. And so over time, some of these capabilities will spin out of the Polkadot runtime itself and out into parachains. So we may have a parachain that's just for governance, and that is no longer a thing that happens in Polkadot. It's like a service that the Polkadot delegates. So I hope that really kind of makes you understand how this is like a truly composable computing system. I'm kind of like, this was supposed to be a 10-minute talk with, I think, or 20-minute talk with 10 minutes for questions. So do we maybe have some questions?
Yeah, can you see the comments on the right side?
Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And yes, I see people. Yeah, can you help moderate some of these questions for me? It's a little bit up to read through them all.
Sure, absolutely. I haven't seen there's a lot of activity to dig through because there's some spirited discussions.
I love it. I love it.
Dan, Nuke Man Dan, stirring things up a bit.
Yep, good. So yeah, but I can just, we're gonna get some swag. Participate in our events for sure. Dan Forbes mentioned that your commitment is built into the currency. How do you base on it? Yeah, so it's based on how long in Polkadot, and I think, it would be a Polkadot concept. We use what's called a nominated proof of stake. And so you stake your tokens, you lock up your tokens, your value, your commitment to the network. And you can either have a say in a vote by committing a lot of tokens, or you can say, I'm going to commit these tokens for a long period of time. I agree to lock them up for a long period of time. And that can have the same effect as voting with a large number of tokens. I don't know much about where to buy cryptocurrency. Those aren't the types of questions that I answer. Thank you. I love this hat. And yes, it's always good for deflecting questions that I don't want to answer. What is Kusama really? This is such a good question. Thank you. Okay, so we talked about Polkadot as a protocol where you can build. It's like an operating system, or even maybe like a protocol for building operating systems. And so earlier I mentioned that Polkadot, the network, capital P, capital N, it is kind of like designed to be very business oriented, very stable, kind of like Wall Street, if you will, where you don't really want things to change very quickly because it makes it difficult for people to build businesses on top of like a moving target. And this is really desirable in some cases. But then, of course, crazy people like me, we want to move fast and break things. And so because of the way that blockchains work, they rely on these crypto economic security guarantees. You need people to stake real value in order for things to really work, in order to really see how things work. You can't really truly test out blockchain protocols on a test net that has a faucet, because it's just not how it works. It's not how the game theory works. It's not how the crypto economic security guarantees work. So Kusama is a value-bearing network. It has real value. You can lose real money and make real money in Kusama. But the zeitgeist of the Kusama network, the reason that everyone is there is to push boundaries and experiment and see what's next. Whereas the reason is everyone is in Polkadot is to create a stable platform for people to build profitable businesses. So I'm working with a group of people right now on, I'm going to shamelessly shill something that I'm working on. There is a upcoming art competition being done with a group out of China. I can't share, I don't know. I'll put it in the private chat, and maybe if someone could share it for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that's being done on Kusama. Art on blockchain is much more of a Kusama thing, whereas, like a sushi swap or something where people really want to make money, that's more of a Polkadot thing. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it's blockchain create art, and where it's going to be mid-March, hosted in China, but it's going to be global. So yeah, that's going to be super exciting. I can kind of keep talking to fill the space, or if this is a good time for you to kind of make the transition to the next presenter.
I think you've got about another minute.
Cool. Yeah, I see. It seems like people are really getting it. Kusama's more on the creative side, the experimental side, maybe not even just creatively in terms of artwork, but creatively in terms of code. We want to see like, oh, does this work? Like, in fact, this art gallery thing, what we're testing out is the idea of a native application on the Relay chain. So this art gallery that's going to be the platform for this competition is built right on Kusama. It's not a parachain. And at least for now, this is something that you wouldn't really see on Polkadot, but Dan and his crazy friends at Parity, they want to try this out. So Kusama's for creativity. If you're a hacker, that's the place to be. If you want to make money, go to Polkadot. I prefer to hack than make money.
Thanks, Dan. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of fun. Great event.
Good seeing you. All right.
Likewise. Bye-bye.